now.
There
we go. We're recording. So this will be available on the community link. I will put it in the chat. This is going to be recorded. So if you do have questions later, Mr. Stephen Bell will be able to answer them directly on the community. For today's session, let's use the chat, or you could go off of mute and interrupt Mr. Bell. But please, hey. All right. I'm going to let you.
I'm getting some feedback.
Okay. All right.
I think it's circling around on your mic. There it goes. That's better.
Okay. All right, let's go ahead and get started.
All right, welcome everyone to this session of MVP Meetup. The topic for discussion is implementing a CMDB. I'll be presenting a couple of slides and opening it up for discourse. I'll throw in my 2 cents, and then I'd be interested in people, what your feedback is, what you might think concerning this, and what your experience might be. So let's go ahead and get started. I have to throw the safe harbor up because this is my opinion, and you can take it with a lump of salt. Okay, so our agenda is basically 4 slides total. We'll be talking about CMDB architecture, then the data feeds into the CMDB, and then implementing the CMDB. This is me. I am a 5-year MVP with ServiceNow. I work for Accenture. I have almost 9 years experience with ServiceNow and about almost 38 years experience as a developer. So I've been at it for a while. I also have main focuses in scripting and CMDB, discovery, and everything around CMDB. So all the ITSM, ITOM, and asset management side of the world. I also do quite a bit with cloud management. And I'm a certified instructor. And I teach on 12 topics now, so this is slightly out of date. And I'm doing a lot of different things right now. So very much into the development on the CMDB world. All right, so first discussion, CMDB architecture. What should really be there? A couple things on this. First off, before we open it up for talk, is discovery is sometimes misperceived as being the CMDB. It is a single feed for the CMDB, so watch out for that. The next one is that ServiceNow has brought forth the CSDM, and we are at currently 2.1. 3.0 should be released in the next couple of months, hopefully. So we'll see a 3.0 rolling out on that. Then ITSM is a main user of the CMDB data as asset management. And both of these are extremely important consumers of the CMDB. And then I'd like to bring in the reconciliation engine, which has been around for a little while now and is underutilized by people who have implemented the CMDB and discovery. Then, of course, discovery, service mapping, third-party tools, and so on, plus customizations to the table structure, to the scripts, and everything else supporting the CMDB. So this is a generalized vision of a typical CMDB architecture. And I think that right now we can open this up. I've got a couple things I want to point out. Number one is the reconciliation engine, the order of precedence, and the dedupe functionality is a core feature now for many different feeds to go through to get to the CMDB. Then a little bit on the tail end of things is the CMDB Health Dashboard, which is relatively new for monitoring things. On the far side for discovery, service mapping, third-party tools and such, I want to point out that mid-server clusters are your friend, especially in production. This helps load balancing and failover. So it's a very important and crucial component for deployment of the CMDB and automation of the CMDB. And then let's see what else. Anything else on this? Not really. I was going to bring in a whole bunch of stuff on asset management. I backed away because asset management is not used by every company, and part of this has to do with automatic creation of the CMDB records. So if you create an asset, then you can set it up to create a CMDB record. Okay, so based on the things I brought up so far, anyone got anything they would like to feed in, ask me questions on?
Hi, this is Peg. I've got a question.
Sure, go ahead.
How do you know, or how do you get your CMDB to the point where your IT organization considers it their single source of truth when it comes to AWS and all the other hardware that we would discover in data centers? So we're running a discovery project right now, and we know that this is just a smaller piece of the larger CMDB project, but it seems like nobody really knows when this will be finished or ready or single source. So how do we know when we're there, or what can we do to help push it towards single source of truth?
There's a couple of aspects to that. Thank you, Peg. That was a very good question, and it's one that I get asked a lot. The first one is the old 80-20 rule. So when you're at the point where you can discover 80% of your infrastructure, you basically arrived. The data is automated for the most part. You're bringing in as much as you possibly can without going into the detailed problems. There's the active not classifieds, the live not classifieds in discovery, and the service mapping is the particular CIs without a pattern can happen in discovery as well, where you're not gaining very much back for the amount of work you're actually pushing into trying to discover things. So getting 80% of the way there is usually considered a pretty good rule of thumb. If you can get beyond that, you're doing great. You want your accuracy to be very high, so you want it to be as automated as possible. You've reduced the manual input and the spreadsheet uploads down to almost zero, except for on things that can't be discovered, like asset tags. And you've gotten most of the low-hanging fruit out of the way, where a good portion of the networks are being discovered. You're working with good credentials on everything, but there may be a handful of devices out there that just are not credentialed the same way and may even have individual credentials. So you get the idea. There are these little ones and twos that you get back that take quite a bit of work to get them back. And you've gotten all the easy stuff out of the way, getting to that 90%, or I'm sorry, 80% rule of thumb.
Awesome, thank you.
Sure.
Hey, Stephen, this is Seema.
Hi, Seema.
I work for Pfizer and manage asset management applications in ServiceNow. I do have a questions and maybe guidance from you how to go about managing asset records and creating CIs. Today, we do create from asset records. We do have other sources where discovery creates CIs, people creating CIs. So what's the best way to go about? Looking at your diagram, it looks like that asset creates CIs, discovery does not bring CIs. So what's the best methodology to create CIs to avoid duplications or data quality?
Yeah, this diagram was simply to show the feeds that could go into CMDB that are the common feeds. I wasn't really showing the reverse of that into asset management. Model category table out of the box is decent. It's not comprehensive. So it takes a while to build that up, where when you enter in an asset, it will actually build a CI on the other side in the correct table. So it takes some time to put it in for both directions and get it looking right. The reverse of creating assets is actually simpler. because you really just have four, right? You've got your basic asset, you've got your consumable, you've got your software and your hardware. So the reverse direction is actually pretty straightforward. But when you go over to the other direction from asset management to CMDB, that takes some serious thought and work as to how that's going to happen. And that all works through models and model category. Now, with that understood, as far as the best practices surrounding it, again, it's always, I recommend implementing CMDB for asset management and hardware asset management before you even touch software asset management. I recommend having discovery in place before you do anything with asset management. I think service mapping probably could be fit in there and implemented somewhat at the same time, but you really need your automation of the CMDB to be really nailed down good, and that way you get your existing topology, your existing CMDB. Lisa, could we have everyone muted, please? I'm getting some feedback from some people. Thank you. That way you get the majority of your known topology into the asset management table. So discovery is really important, or some sort of discovery tool. Service mapping is really important to get the relationships down so that that's understood. And then you build out your model category so that assets are being created. And then you can look at new things. So how do you want to do this? Do you want to go from procurement to asset management to creation of the CI automatically from asset, which, by the way, a lot of people do. But you can also end up with the service team taking it and putting it into the CMDB for the first time and having it backward create the asset. I think this is upside down going in that direction, but we also run into a lot of companies that do it that way. I prefer the procurement side. Anyway, I hope that helped. It's I get this question a lot. There's a lot of variables to it.
It did help, absolutely. And some of the we do today with automations was just
Good.
From outside perspective, what is the best way to do it versus how we do it. But thank you very much.
You're welcome.
We also have a question from Derek on the chat. Soon, did you have a chance to look at that? He said he was testing CI reconciliation for manual entry and could not get it to work.
Yeah, manual entry's got a problem right now in Orlando, and it may have had a problem in New York. I've just checked it out recently, and it failed for me. So, not sure what's going on with that. I'll just be blunt.
I didn't read the question.
Pardon?
I didn't read the whole question. So.
Okay. Does not utilize CI reconciliation. Yeah, and it should. Yeah, there's a problem there. It has an entry in reconciliation for manual entry, but it doesn't work. So I'm not sure what's going on with it right now. I haven't had a chance to turn in a high on it, but I bumped into it for the first time in front of a client a couple of days ago. And it was very embarrassing because I kind of watched this and it didn't work. It leads me to suspect that the uploads may have a problem as well, and I got to go check it out. Let's see, when I saw the manual entry was one of the out-of-the-box choices. I'm reading your thing here. When I saw the manual entry was one of the out-of-the-box choices for discovery source, I naively assumed the IRE would handle precedents for manual input versus integration. Yeah, it doesn't. Oh, you did raise the high. Okay. Yeah, I was going to slam one in yesterday and it didn't happen yet. Yeah, sure. No, it's busted. And I mean, it's busted. So don't use don't expect manual entry to work, folks, when you're doing the reconciliation. It should, but it does not. Another question from the chat area.
What advice you can give a company that is doing CMDB all manually?
Got an hour? That's a nasty one. Yes, there are two aspects to this. Number one, I would normally say implement a record for the data upload inside the reconciliation, and then put the manual record in there as well. But since manual isn't working for reconciliation, it doesn't mean anything right now, but you might do it anyway just to have a forward look. The next thing is set your processes in such a way that you're reducing the amount of manual entry on an individual basis, and go to uploads as much as possible. Another thing you might do is then implement some sort of data certification. There's a data certification plugin out there. Highly recommend it. It allows you to double check the actual ownerships. And what it does is it allows you to package things up so that the existing ownerships of CIs are then sent as a checklist to the owner, and the owner has to validate them. You'll have to have someone actually working those tasks to make sure that you know, they're checked against the existing CMDB, and that way you have a couple things. One is you've got basically a type of inventory going on where you know that the person actually owns the thing, and then that it actually exists still. So if they come back and say, no, we've never heard of this, then you'll have to do some you know, legwork on it to determine who's got it and so on. But that's a double check so that you're just not uploading blindly. You're also turning around and verifying. Beyond that, there's not a lot. Highly recommend going to automation as soon as possible. Getting people out of the middle of the updates is the best thing in the world. I have had people upload things like users to the CMDB. I knew we were types of consumables, but I had no idea. Yeah, 300 users in the CMDB. I've seen cans of oil in the CMDB. I've seen crazy stuff in the CMDB. Getting people out of that and getting it to an automation of the actual network, both software and hardware, is the next maturity step to every organization. And you want that. You want that badly. So you can deal with it for a while on small stuff, you know, and have like just servers in your CMDB. That's usually the first place to start when you're firing up a CMDB, and then introducing people's devices, you know, like laptops, desktops, and so on. And then trying to keep track of a minimal amount of hardware or software. And then the final thing is business services, business applications, application services, and so on, getting those put into the CMDB. You're going to want to do that anyway, since they're non-discoverables and manual or automatic. You're going to want to put that stuff in. But yeah, there you go. Make sure your relationships are in place. Verify the relationships. Make sure that you have some sort of business service mapping going on. You can do that manually, so it makes a lot of sense. That will go a long way towards getting you to even though it's manually entered, it'll get you to a usable CMDB that your ITSM group can use. The services crowd really is your number one consumer in this regard with a small CMDB. There really isn't many others that will rely on it because there isn't enough data there. But anyway, hope that answered your question. It's one I get a lot too. You know, it's like, what do we do? You know, we've got all manual. Okay, let me move to the next slide here, and it may actually help. So we've talked a little bit about the architecture, and I've given you some best practices around some of that, but let's expand on the data feed thing, because as you heard me mention, there's the uploads, and you know, these are the manual uploads, and then the manual entry side. And then I've also talked to the reconciliation engine and the order of precedence you can set up for golden sources. This is huge. I can't push this enough. I used to write these kind of things before ServiceNow came up with their own and integrated it with the environment. And what I did is I set up a very similar voting record kind of thing where I had the highest order of precedence was my golden record, and then the next one down, the number 2 would be, you know, some other automation. Finally, the last 2 obviously would be your uploads and your manual entry. ServiceNow came along and built this. So the precedence allows you to order the golden source. And let's say for SCCM, for example, SCCM is an agent-based system. It can do provisioning, but it also does a decent job of discovery, especially Microsoft software, and does a great job of bringing back additional information that's a little harder to get through discovery. So it makes a good golden source for certain software tables inside the CMDB. And therefore, if you do an SCCM integration, you can bring that data in, and when it's written down in the CMDB in those specific tables, you can set it up so no one else can write over anything it's filled in. And that's the whole idea between the precedence and reconciliation stuff. Normalization, usually you want to take things, Hewlett-Packard's the worst I've run into, take things from various manufacturers, and you know, if they've got 47 different naming conventions like Hewlett-Packard, HewPack, HewP Inc., HP Inc., HP, H.P. You get the idea. There's like whoever was in charge of the factory during the day. Anyway, the problem with that is then it automatically creates a record for that particular manufacturer in the manufacturer table. So all of a sudden you've got, you know, 15 different HPs sitting there. Normalization allows you to take all 15, call them aliases, and turn them into just H.P. And that it becomes the norm for your entire CMDB. You can also do that with the model table, which is important too. I've set this sort of thing up, and it took me a couple of days to manually enter everything, because once you get into a kind of cadence for putting in all of these and you've done the investigation, you know what they are, you can get it pretty much cleaned up in no time flat. But there are also other normalization tools out there, third-party type things. CI identification, there's a whole raft of stuff around that, and we teach this in service mapping pretty heavily because there are problems there, and also in discovery classes we teach this because of the potential for issues. And so there's a lot of information behind that, and configuration to get it to working optimally and keeping down duplication. But ServiceNow also has duplicate detectors. So they go out, they try to identify the CI. If it looks like it's going to be a duplicate, they'll mark it as a dupe. It's just different enough that it doesn't, it doesn't update the existing CI, but instead would create a second CI. So ServiceNow handles that and then generates a task. All right, so now we got that all sitting out there. Anyone have any questions on this sort of stuff?
Feel free to unmute yourselves if you do have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did you permanently mute everyone, Lisa?
I don't think I did. Did I?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, Philip, go ahead.
Okay. I just, wanted to make sure that we could actually unmute for you.
Oh, good.
Oh, yeah. No, it's okay. We just had people talking over or, background noise and stuff like that. So go ahead.
Yeah, no, we found that with the reconciliation engine, that's probably the most difficult part of doing any import is remembering to actually call that. I almost wish ServiceNow would set that up as any import into the CMDB would automatically go through the IRE versus having to remember to put that as part of your code.
True. Yeah, that is one thing to watch out for when you do this, the manual uploads, and it needs to be carefully done.
Out of curiosity, it's been a while since I looked. Did they ever set up the SCCM integration to automatically go through the IRE, or is that still, you have to manually configure that as well?
I believe you still have to manually configure it.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I thought I'd ask. We hadn't finished our upgrade to Orlando yet, so.
Yeah, certain things like Steve McCarty just put in, service mapping and reconciliation are part of the base platform. They're additional, well, reconciliation is part of the base platform. So, and what I wanted to mention on this, Philip, was that service mapping actually comes with some of the stuff pre-installed, and they put records into the reconciliation table for you. So that stuff's, you know, there are some plugins that are now coming with reconciliation records that are part of the plugin installation side. So that's pretty cool. But Steve, to answer your question, the service mapping is a pay-for service. It usually, if you get the ITAM suite, you get discovery and service mapping together. But yeah, they're paid services. Anybody else on this? Got about 4 minutes left.
For those that haven't gone through the CMDB micro certification yet, I learned something new while going through that over the weekend. That the you were just talking about it. What was it I was going to say? That the it was something with mapping. Wow, I had it in my head and then it's gone. I'll go look it up and come back.
Okay, yeah, I was going, actually, I've got a slide here that is recommended links, and one of those is that CMDB micro-cert. So, and
Lisa, it was informative, I will tell you that.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend it. That's why I've got it on the additional links here. I've got a couple of things extra there, CSDM link and a couple other things to point you to going out and looking at what the latest and greatest is for process and also for supporting. But that micro-cert is an excellent, it's a hands-on self-paced course, and it's free. And it's 20 hours and it's worth going through.
Patrick, I'll put it up on the chat.
Yeah, we got a couple of questions here. Let's see, Patrick, we're on Madrid. Is there a way to automate the deduplication process? Yes, but I believe it's going to be custom for you. I set some stuff up like that for one of my customers. And then also we had to go through a 10-step recovery process because they had a significant number of duplicate records in their relationship table, tens of millions. And then also, and it required some serious cleanup because the CIs were also in the tens of millions, and the ITSM side of things had connected into a lot of the duplicates. And because Madrid doesn't do things out of magic in there, it was a real grief type thing. So we had to actually go out and mark them as duplicate ourselves and then get rid of all of the actual duplicates. And there is a trick to it. We basically looked at it through fixed scripts, went through a fixed script type thing, and then went through and updated the records. Terry asked, where do we find the info on the CMDB micro-cert? I'm giving out the link at the end of this session.
And Stephen, you can also post it on that community link as well, where this recording will be in about an hour. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if you want to, you can post this deck. Anyway, the top takeaways, since we're down to 1 minute here, take care of architecting your CMDB solution. Build a diagram like you saw just a couple slides ago. Sit down and take the time in Visio or Draw.io or whatever flavor, and put it on paper and visualize it. Understand what you're going to be doing and how it's going to be done. Identify your current and future data feeds, because you're going to need to know how to set everything up. Utilize that reconciliation engine. It is the best tool. Also, get automation in there. Discovery, service mapping, any other third-party product that can help you out and get the human out of it is a best practice. And then I've got these as the links. Configuration Management Fundamentals is that micro-cert. CSDM 2.1 is a really great place to start. Go out there. It's got all the process and procedure for CMDB, and it's got it all laid out, including roles, responsibilities, and everything. So a very nice document. Also goes into some of the discovery and service mapping side of things. And that's it. Thank you very much for attending this session.
Thank you very much.
Thank you and all. Have a great knowledge.